Thanks for being with us on this Friday. Welcome to Mail It In Friday edition, my favorite day of the week. There's Marco D'Amico. I'm Sean Starr, and we are ready to tell you about Little Bear. LittleBearOnline.com, proud sponsor of the show. 10% off that first order for your favorite family member that isn't your son, daughter, or spouse. Use that code Order1, and their subscription model takes care of the reminding for you and save even more money. LittleBearOnline.com. You can find them on St. Catherine in Westmount, right across the street. Think about Alexis Neon. Think about Westmount Square. They're right across the street from there. Family owned, local business. We support local past the pandemic. Thank God that's over. Marco D'Amico, what's good? Welcome to Friday, brother. How's the week treating you so far?
Oh man, the week's been great.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. I mean, summer's obviously like kind of over-ish. Training camp and Habs deeper, more in-depth conversations right around the corner, which personally I'm very much looking forward to because of the season they came off of. Like, I did not believe the Canadiens were going to make the playoffs. I will admit that. I did not think they were going to do it. Lo and behold, the infamous challenge at the feet of the captain, they got in out in five, but man, what a 5-game series it was. How did they
Yep.
get back there? Marco, how did they get back there in a condensed Olympic year where the Canadiens will play 16 back-to-backs, the most in hockey, tied with San Jose? They're
Yeah.
going to need some breakout performers. They're going to need Caulfield and Suzuki and Gooley and Dobson and Hudson and Montembeault and all those guys to do it all over again and preferably be a little bit better. But they're going to need some help. Who's
Mm-hmm.
the most likely breakout performer for the 2025-2026 Montreal Canadiens?
Likely. Huh.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
listen, you can throw out the word likely and tell me for fact that this guy is going to
no, no,
bust
no,
out.
no. But I've got different spectrums of where I would see. So I think the first player I want to talk about is Zachary Budzik. I think Budzik, the way he was utilized to end the season with the St. Louis Blues, caught the eye of the Montreal Canadiens, who I mean already liked him to begin with. The thing to me is, again, quick snapper in the bumper, really fast shot, really hard shot,
Yeah,
just an overall cannonball on the ice, just everywhere. Plays that physical game, goes in the corners, has a very high success rate when it comes to board battles and puck. Like in French, we say harponner la rondelle, so puck retrievals in one-on-one battles. It's really, to me, one of the missing elements that the Canadiens needed in their top six is that combativity combined with a skill set for shooting. And I
yeah,
feel like, especially a left shot like that, now you got him and Demidov as left shot options coming into your lineup so that it's not all Slavkovsky. I
sure.
think that absolutely helps kind of spread around the wealth of the play. And obviously, like I could have easily said breakout candidate Ivan Demidov, but like that would be like one of the most lazy analyses I could do. I think what Budzik is going to bring, I think I could see a 20 to 25 goal pace from him. I could see a guy that could be pushing the 50
Let's go.
points. I see that in his future, and that future could be as soon as this season because you also have to factor in it's a contract year for him too. And for a young man that had such a strong end to the season, he's going to want to follow that up big time. So I expect a guy like Budzik to get second power play wave time. I think he's going to be very dangerous decoy
Mm,
option for a guy like Patrick Laine, who will be at the left circle waiting for the 1T, and instead of taking the 1T, could just fake the easy pass over to a guy like Budzik, who's going to be in the slot with a left shot ready to go. Poof, straight shot in, which
yeah,
is a tactic that they use a lot in St. Louis. So I really do like the potential combination of having like a Dobson, Budzik, and
yeah.
Laine second wave power play core and kind of fill out the rest. I really do feel like this is a guy that the Canadiens are going to give every opportunity to prove himself and to grow. You would not trade a guy like Logan
Mm.
Mayu, sorry, to make a player like him your prototypical third line winner. They want him to be their version of Brandon Hagel eventually.
I love the Zachary Bolduc nomination. We're talking about breakout performers for the 2025-2026 Montreal Canadiens.
Hmm.
I'm going to throw out a name for you. I'm surprised you didn't throw out this name first, that you went Bolduc. Because for me, the gimme putt answer is Demidov all day, every
Yeah,
day, right?
but
And
to me,
and the,
it's yeah.
and the reason, right? And I'm going to bring up a future Hall of Famer and a multi Stanley Cup champion as my comp. Like if the Canadiens are going to get back to the playoffs, they're going to need something close to what Patrick Kane provided to Chicago in his first couple of seasons as a Blackhawk. Like Marco and I spent some time last week talking about Demidov's role, talking about how this guy has the very good, strong potential of being a line driving winger in the absence right now of a mainstay 2C, because as of this recording, we're not talking about Kirby Dach. We're not talking about the Canadiens making a deal or whatever. So as of right now, it's still in limbo, right? But when you look back at Patrick Kane's first 2 seasons in Chicago, 21 goals, 51 assists, 25 goals, 45 assists the year after. So that's 72 points and 70 points respectively. Based on listening to Marco for months, reading about Demidov, people around Demidov, I don't think it's that far-fetched that we're talking about a guy that could bust through a 60-point full season rookie campaign. And that to me is step one to getting this team back into the playoffs. Breakout performer number one for me has to be Ivan Demidov, the future superstar forward for the Montreal Canadiens. About can he? I mean, is it how fair is it on a scale of 1 to 10 to talk about Demidov and Patrick Kane within the same breath?
When the Chicago Blackhawks were in the range for second overall, and the news hadn't been released that they had a penchant for a certain Artemi Levshunov.
Yeah.
The comp that everyone gave Demidov was a taller Patrick Kane out in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I see it, the hands, right? The slick behavior, the infectious attitude, the work ethic, it all really depends on, what they or how Demidov continues to develop. Obviously, the comparisons to other Russian skilled wingers is a whole lot easier when you see like Kaprizov or Kucherov, right? Because you've seen that kind of player before. But really, to me, reminds me a lot more of a bigger Patrick Kane. And yeah, I mean, you look at Patrick Kane's rookie season, right? Like I'm not sure. I think it was in the 60-point range or the 50-point range, but it was definitely
in his rookie season. Patrick Kane, 72.
72 there.
Yeah, I said
There
72,
you go, right?
70, back-to-back years. He had 142 points combined in 2 seasons.
Yeah, and led the team as a rookie. Like, I mean, just, crazy numbers for a guy that just comes in like that and performs the way that he did. And I think, like, ultimately, when you look at a player like Demidov, the only thing that would inhibit him from hitting numbers like that, or actually the only 2 things that would inhibit him, would probably be health related, right? So if anything happens. And then obviously one of the bigger, I would say, elements that I look at when I evaluate or project rookie scoring is opportunity.
Yeah.
Right. So if Juraj Slafkovsky and Ivan Demidov and Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield and Lane Hudson make up the first power play wave, I have significant confidence that you could see a 60-plus point campaign from a guy like Demidov. That's for me. And I said the same thing last year with Lane Hudson. I was like, yeah, probably over 40 points, get 66. Yeah. So I'm always on the more cautious side of my element. Is there a world where Demidov can get 70 points right off the bat? There is a world.
I'm sure.
But you would have to give him the same usage that Patrick Kane had in his rookie season, or the same usage. Like this is a guy that would have to get 19, 20 minutes a night, full first power play wave usage, offensive zone deployment, all of it, right? And I just don't know that Martin St. Louis is going to do that right off the bat. Just based on the way that he brought along Lane Hudson last year, where he didn't start on the first power play wave, short of 22 minutes a night and stuff like that. He wasn't being used in everything in the same way that we used to in the past. Whereas now, it's a completely different story, because a guy like Demidov actually got playoff experience, which Lane Hudson did not. But Juraj Slafkovsky was the same thing. Start him on the 4th, 3rd, back to the 4th, a little bit on the 1st, back to the 4th, until he had that kind of breakout, stretch of 10, 15 games, and has now been basically a staple on the first line. So to me, that will be a telling factor. But again, like Demidov is one thing. One other element that you brought up, and I think this is a key thing to talk about, is the 16 back-to-back games.
Yeah.
The Montreal Canadiens do not make the playoffs unless Jakub Dobeš wins more than half of them.
You son of a, you stole my next guy.
Huh?
The next breakout performer is Jakub Dobeš, brother. That's the next guy for me to get this team back over the line. Jakub Dobeš is as important, maybe more so than Ivan Demidov, because of the Caden Primo, how that fumbled last year. He comes in. I'm gonna say that he's gonna be the mainstay backup to Montembeault. And to see his numbers, obviously, his debut, pitches a shutout, looks very good out of the gate, and then things started to normalize where he was his numbers like getting into March, where he getting obviously into April, where he played a couple of times. Like, remember he was getting caught up in the post. His footwork needed to improve. He'd trip and be out of position a couple of different times. Like lots of room to
Very
grow.
aggressive.
His foundation to build off of, to me, is very, very strong. His attitude, his demeanor on the ice is very pro to me, very competitive. I really like Jakub Dobeš. I think he's got a high ceiling. But if the Canadiens, Marco, are going to get over the line again, they're going to need very good tandem goaltending with Jakub Dobeš.
They're going to need the kind of goaltending that Jakub Dobeš gave the Canadiens in the month of January.
Yes.
Simple as that. It's as simple as that. And so, because I was talking about it on BPM Spa last week, where we were like, how many games do you really expect a guy like Samuel Montembeault to play? Yeah. And I'm like, you factor in all these back-to-backs, right? You factor in the fact that Montembeault is probably going to be going to Milan for the tournament, though I don't necessarily think he's going to play that much, if at all. You have to factor in what you can do here, what strategy. And I just don't see the Canadiens overusing Montembeault again. There's a guy that unfortunately got injured, in the playoffs last year as well. You want him to be healthy, because I think that playoff series goes a whole lot longer if Montembeault is in net for that game 4. I don't think that Jakub Dobeš lost them the game by any stretch of the imagination, but I just feel like Montembeault is making miracle saves after miracle saves, and that could have, propelled the Canadian to maybe another win or two, or to a longer series.
Agreed.
So I think a guy like Dobeš, you have to expect him to play at least 25 games this season, in my honest opinion, if not more. Right. Mm-hmm. So the sweet spot for me would be Montembeault, like 55 games. A guy like Dobeš, probably 23, 25. And then maybe you get an odd call up if the Canadiens have already made the playoffs for, a Jacob Fowler as welcome to the show, kid. But ultimately, to me, like, he has to put up, above average league backup numbers this season for the Canadiens to make the playoffs, because the backup situation prior to his call up almost cost the Canadiens a playoff spot in the end.
Interesting. I'm also curious to get your last nomination for Breakout, because I'm going to go Florian Xhekaj. I'm going to go wild card on you here. I'm going to go Florian.
I think it can make sense.
Just because of I really like Jeff Gorton and Ken Hughes. I really like how they communicate. I really like how they build this hockey club. And when Jeff Gorton kind of hinted at, the type of player they're attracted to, the type of player they believe they need in order to really be competitive, because they're big on saying that, they're trying to open the window to win the Stanley Cup. And when they feel that window is open credibly to win the title, that they're going to do a lot to get over the line. And they talk about the dog mentality, that dog behavior on the ice. And I'm going to throw out the Florian Xhekaj wild card, a guy who wants to play with his brother, a guy who's hardwired to play a certain way, who didn't get on the power play and still scored over 20 in the American Hockey League. So that's my final nomination. How wild of a card is the Florian Xhekaj in terms of having an impact in October, maybe through Christmas here? How realistic is that?
With the Canadiens, or just in general?
I'm with the Canadiens, yeah.
I don't see the Canadiens starting him in the NHL.
Okay.
My 2 cents.
Yep.
Reasoning simply just because I feel like he's a guy that has a lot more reps to get in. I know a lot of people are watching what he did last year, but you have to factor in that was a lot of goal scoring. You want to round out his game. You want him to play all situations, because eventually you're going to want to bring him up and play in that, like that bottom 6 center kind of style where he's crushing guys and playing on the penalty kill. Like we talked about, having a role right? You want to mold that role in the American
Mhm.
Hockey League so that when it comes time, he can be called up. I think he'll get games with the Canadiens this season, absolutely. But I think he's got to go from fourth line center to top six center and really kind of excel at that before you can bring, and I'm talking in the American Hockey League,
Yes.
before you can bring him up to Montreal. So do I think he's going to have a breakout year in the American Hockey League? Absolutely. Do I think he's going to turn some heads when he gets called up to the Canadiens eventually? Because unfortunately, I can knock on wood all day, but there will be injuries. Yes, I do think that he's going to do that. I'm just to start penciling him into the NHL,
Mhm.
I think is maybe not the best call, simply just because, again, this is a guy that I think only played 2 years of junior instead of the
Correct.
usual 4.
Mhm.
Played last year, and you saw him in the playoffs, right? The games got a little tighter. Yeah, he was more physically involved, but the production went away,
Yes,
and you
correct.
just want him. And that's not a bad thing. It's normal, right?
He played
But
against
you just,
professional men hockey like Charlotte, no Abbotsford. I mean, not Abbotsford,
I
Charlotte. I mean, this
understand.
was a tough team.
Yeah, exactly. But when and this is where the difference lies, and this is why I want to bring this situation to clarity. In the playoffs, it wasn't like the regular season. In the playoffs, game plans were made for that line that he and Owen Beck were on, right?
Right.
Game
Right.
plans were made for that line because they knew that that was Pascal Vincent's trump card, that no one would expect that fourth line to be good, and then Pool Fury is
Mhm.
scoring, right? And
Right.
then the penalty kill, that he was excellent in that. So to me, he has all the elements. I'm not going to sit here and be painted as a Xhekaj hater. Quite the opposite. But when you're looking at it from a developmental standpoint, you do not want to rush these guys before they're ready, because then you're going to make the same mistake that every other administration has made.
Yeah.
And right now on the bottom 6, what are you really going to do? Are you going to bring him on as a 13th forward and play him 10 minutes a game?
They're
Or do
not
you
afraid of
rather he
doing that.
play
They've done it before. They're not
with
afraid.
who?
Well,
With
they're not
who?
afraid. Hey?
With who?
Well, they brought I forget who was I was trying to who there I forget who the player was where I mean, obviously, I mean, the Uri Slafkovsky, bringing him in as a teenager and
That,
giving him the
that
first
is
line,
that is the
like,
curse of the first overall pick.
yeah, but
But
still,
what
they weren't
prospect
shy.
started?
Martin St. Louis in that one instance
Yeah,
was let me develop the guy. So all I'm saying is that's why I prefaced it by saying he's a wild card pick for me, because if he comes in and has a great camp, MSL might turn around and say, "I've got this one. Let me handle this kid because I see something
yeah.
there." And that's how I looked at it.
Yeah, but you can do that when there's no expectations to make the playoffs. You can take more time to focus on development instead of, focusing on strategy and whatnot. It's a different. They've reached a different point in their strategy as a coaching staff as well.
Yes.
So I would rather see Florian Xhekaj play 17, 18 minutes a game in Laval, dominate offensively, physically, defensively, and then earn that call up, because you're continuing momentum. The
Yep.
worst thing you can do for a young player is bring him in early. He struggles, and then you got to send him back.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that has ruined a few prospects in the Montreal Canadiens' recent future. And outside of Yuri Slafkovsky, I haven't seen them bring up guys that look good at camp and weren't ready. Like even Jaden Struble looked very good at camp 2 years ago, and they still sent him to Laval. Right, he was one of the last cuts because they just felt he needed to
Correct.
simmer and get used to the pro
Yeah, that
style.
part I get.
And
I'm
then
just saying, if he has a very strong cap, I just can't simply rule out that they may look at this as a missing element, and the coach may be comfortable saying, let me mold this. I've got this."
I can see why, and I can understand why. I just don't think you would be doing him any
Fair,
long-term
fair.
favors by doing that.
Who
And the
else?
same applies for the person I want to bring up. I've seen a lot of smoke around Adam Engstrom.
Yes, huh?
And, David Reinbacher breakout, for example, is predictable to me because you already saw it in the playoffs. I think, people expect David Reinbacher to be like that number 3 right shot D. And I don't mean third on the pecking order. I mean number 3 D that shoots right.
Yeah.
I think that, number 2, number 3 kind of impact for David Reinbacher. But I don't know that people really have a top 4D trajectory for a guy, or a projection for a guy like Adam Engstrom. And I think that may change this year. I
Mhm.
think that top pairing, because it is going to be that top pairing for all intents and purposes, is probably going to end up being Adam Engstrom, David Reinbacher. And I have a feeling that pairing is probably going to be one of the most dangerous and overall strong pairings in the American Hockey League. Those two together, to me, are going to significantly, what's the word we would use here? Pressure the bottom pair of Alex Carrier, Arbor Xhekaj and Jaden Struble, because if they're not careful, and I'd say this more for the latter two than for Carrier, they may get leapfrogged in this situation, right? And that's a problem. It's a good problem to have if you're the organization, but that's a problem for these young guys to really have to come out and be careful. I think Adam Engstrom has all the potential to be a top 4 left shot defenseman in this league, whether with the Canadiens or other. And I feel like he plays the style that the Canadiens like, that mobility, the inside track he has when he's skating, the ability to maintain possession in the offensive zone for long periods of time and escape coverage, just through strong lateral movement. His shot, really good seeing eye shot. He has all the elements that you would need. Good size, chippy, surprisingly chippy in the playoffs. So I just feel like this is a guy that the Canadiens have identified. In fact, your good buddy, John Sedgwick, was on TSN 690 talking about how he's a player to watch as well, Adam Engstrom. So, this is coming from the general manager of the team. So this is saying something to me. So just someone to keep an eye out, because I have a funny feeling, this is a guy when he was drafted, everybody kind of went, who? And of that class of Swedish defensemen, he's probably the most impressive of them right now.
It's exciting to talk about players that have legitimate promise, not a wish and a prayer. And like so many things have to go right. It's again, it's just another feather in the cap of how different this one is versus all the other regimes. Depending if you're, I don't know, unless you're 80 years old, and you live through Sam Pollock or something like that, and you're like, you missed when I was a kid. Well, that doesn't apply to us, unfortunately. Another outstanding week. Thanks for being with us on this Friday. We're off next week. We'll be back the following week. So just one more break and then the marathon that is the NHL regular season. You can follow Marco D'Amico on all your favorites at MN D'Amico. And to make sure you like, subscribe, and share on youtube.com with lots of fun and future live shows with Marco and I in the not too distant future. Marco, thanks for an outstanding week, and enjoy the week off, and we'll see you pretty soon.
Yeah. See you soon, everybody. Take care now.